Hey everybody, two Alpha Gals here. I'm Debbie Nichols.
And I'm Candace Mathis, and you're listening to In the Tall Grass, where we're sharing stories of reinvention, resilience, and rediscovering joy.
Whether it's facing Alpha Gal syndrome or any other redefining chapter of life, we all have to learn how to navigate the journey through the tall grass. So here we go. Hey everybody, we are so excited. Today we have Elise Buellesbach here with us. Elise is a college student and advocate that we met at the Her Food Allergy Summit. And Elise herself has been navigating food allergies since she was born. So welcome, Elise. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm excited.
Great. We are too. Can you share a little bit with us about yourself and your journey living with food allergies?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was diagnosed with my egg allergy upon first introduction. So that's been like a lifelong journey for me. I was diagnosed with celiac disease when I was 5, like just started kindergarten and boom, celiac disease. And then I was diagnosed with my chicken and turkey allergies, probably in middle school more recently. That's kind of a funny story too, but I really discovered that, food allergies impact my everyday life, obviously, and it's something that I have to deal with all the time. And I just sort of naturally fell into the advocate role because I had to advocate for myself to eat food. I had to advocate for myself to, just be safe on a day-to-day basis. And so then I started advocating for others too. And it's just become something that I love to do. And it really meshes with what I'm studying. I'm a political scientist. And so it just has all become encompassing in what I do.
That's really cool. That's really cool how it's kind of turned into part of your mission. And I have a question for you. So since you have been dealing with this since you were born, and then you were diagnosed with celiac as such a young kid, do you think that made it harder having to avoid so many foods when you were little? Or did that just sort of streamline your menu planning or your parents' menu planning so that you just got very used to avoiding these things from the get-go?
Yeah, no, I have to say that I have no recollection of gluten, of egg, of any of it. And so I don't have any longing or missing for it. It does create really awkward conversations where people will be eating. I had friends in high school who were eating an eclair. And I was like, what's an eclair? Please explain this concept to me because I have no idea. So a lot of awkward, funny conversations like that. But I've just never been a part of who I am. And I've never had any longing for that. But I do think it gives me a really good framework for thinking about avoidance of other things too. And it's given me going into the pandemic, I was really good at washing my hands and not touching high contact surfaces and things like that. Cause I was like, this is what we do for food allergies. I know how to do this already. And so, I would never say that food allergies are easy or good or fabulous, but there's been a lot of learning from this that has served me well.
Oh, absolutely. And, we're always trying to look for those silver linings living with Alpha Gal syndrome. So I think that's great that you are too, right? You knew how to sort of handle a pandemic because you were kind of doing it anyway. So I think that's great.
Yeah. And how did that, as a kid, as a little kid, since you were navigating this forever, do you remember having those moments as a child, having to speak up for yourself? Do you remember kind of those learning moments, from your parents and how I'd love to hear a little bit more about that just from your perspective of how that kind of transpired for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for context, I went to an elementary school that was parent participation, and with that shared snacks. So every day, one member of the class brought in snacks for everybody. Every day, kindergarten through 5th grade. Who came up with this terrible concept? I don't know, but it was a terrible concept. So from day one, I showed up to kindergarten as a newly diagnosed celiac with an egg allergy, and I had my stash of snacks that I kept under the sink. And in hindsight, I don't know why I didn't just bring them in my lunchbox because I never ate the shared snack. But then I'd go to the kitchen sink and I'd pull out my snacks and I'd have my snacks at the same time that all the other kids were eating their snacks. But one of the first memories I have of this very vividly is of a parent having gone through the trouble to make muffins that were safe for me. And they came to school and they were like, here's a muffin that's safe for you. And they were so excited about it. But one of the things that I'm sure you both know, like I don't eat food other people have made in their own houses, much less someone who I don't know well. Like I have a very short list of friends who can make me food, and otherwise it's not personal. I'm just not comfortable with that.
Right.
And so I told the parent, I was like, hey, like thank you, but I don't eat food made in other people's houses. And they were like, no, it's safe. And I was like, no, it's not. And what ended up happening is because I was in elementary school, they handed me the muffin and I like snuck away, threw it away, and then like tried to avoid them for the rest of the day. Because I was like, they're going to ask me how it was and I'm not going to have an answer. And I'm going to have to make them feel bad for going through the trouble and it not being right. And like, I remember really feeling that like almost sense of guilt, which now like looking back is ridiculous, but like feeling that sense of guilt that like I didn't fit into these molds that the parents were trying to fit. And so like from day one, I really learned how to be an advocate. But that all being said, like I recently been talking to my mom about some of those days, and I don't think I realized how much she was doing and how much work like was behind the scenes to make sure that I was safe in that environment.
I think about that really differently, that sort of snack protocol. When my kids were in preschool, it was the same thing, like where a family brought the whole snack. And I was surprised that there weren't more restrictions, even being a parent of a kid who did not have allergies. But I was surprised by that there weren't any rules about which nut butters I could bring or things like that. Here you are, really young. Elementary school is really young, but you were prepared to tell them that you knew that your food allergy rule was to not eat food made in other people's houses. And that's incredible for an elementary schooler to be able to stand up and say, right? And I know the food allergy moms would be so proud of you that you knew your allergy rules, right? And I mean, potentially that could save your life. So good for you, little elementary schooler Elise.
Yeah.
Right. And I figure like once I started doing that, then, I got to high school and like people talked to me like an adult. I was like, now this is easy. Not really. But like, it was just so much more feasible to advocate in high school and now in college because I get to talk as an adult. Whereas, in elementary school, like I was a little person, just barely starting to grasp what having food allergies meant.
Well, sure. And also as a young person, like a little person, not a young college student, but as a little elementary schooler, you're taught to listen to the adults. You're taught to obey the adults. You're taught that the adults are who make the rules. And so to have a parent, while it was so kind that they wanted to include you in the snack, you knew that it was potentially not safe. And here you are as a young kid standing up for yourself. Like that's notable.
Yeah. And, I'm sure, you can probably look back on those situations, like you said, and now you're a political science major. And my husband has a quote that he always says that voids create value in our lives. And I think he got that from someone else that he's a big reader. And, I do think it's kind of true. And I don't know, like, I love the fact that you have shifted this into such a positive value in your life, right? Like you're helping others and you're encouraging other young people to also be advocates and to speak their needs. And we came across something that you had written that was talking about shifting the mindset off of food and making it more about inclusion. So can you share a little bit more about that too, of shifting your mindset into inclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do, I want to circle back real quick because when you said the voids create value, like that struck me really deeply because like growing up, I come from a family of engineers and I was going to be an engineer. I was going to be a civil engineer. I was going to design bridges. Like I had it planned out. And this was like in high school.
Yeah.
And it like my junior year in high school, I really started to engage with FAIR and I had an opportunity to lobby for the FASTER Act. And I ended up at a meeting with my Representative Eshu, who was the subcommittee chair of the health committee. So like super important to passing the FASTER Act. And I was like, holy crap, I'm having this big meeting. And I show up to the meeting thinking it's going to be with a staffer and it's with her.
Wow.
Like the representative sitting in the room, and there I am with her and one of her staffers. And I remember talking to them and telling my story. And I like brought props with foods and labels to have them read. And like I had the whole thing. But the most significant moment there was when the staffer looks up from her food and she's like, "You mean you can't just like run down the street to the deli to grab lunch?" And I was like, exactly. That's it. And that light bulb moment to me was like, oh crap. Like these legislators, some of them are really like Representative Esch is a really compassionate person who wants to support food allergies and people with food allergies. But it's like, if they don't know about the issues we're going through, like then nothing happens. And to me, that like that moment coupled with the fact that I was in an AP Gov class, I was like, whoa, this is where the change happened. And like from that moment on, I was like, okay, this is where I need to be and this is what I need to be doing. And so really like food allergies and what went from like really simple advocacy, like speaking up, at school with snack, turned into like creating more systematic change. And that's really one of the things that just gets me going and makes me excited as a political scientist and as someone with food allergies and as an advocate, that we can make this bigger change, and like that every day can really become something big. So your voids into values like really struck a chord with me.
I can go from there if you want, because I was going to say that made me wonder, because I do think it's so neat how you've taken what you're living with and you're really turning it into what you want to do and how you want to help other people. And that resonates, I think, with probably both me and Candace. I'll speak for you for a second here, Candace, because that's kind of what happened to us when we were diagnosed with alpha-gal syndrome, right? We suddenly realized that there was this void, that nobody was talking about it. Nobody knew what it was. And it was like a life or death situation for us. So that is so cool that you at your age are taking what you've been through and you're turning into something really productive. And that's where I was wondering, what are your goals? What would you like to see happen based off your work with Representative Eshu, based off your work being an advocate, your political science degree that you're working on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a couple levels to that. Like if I take a moment, because I am a political scientist and a little bit of a geek on this, like the big picture stuff, like the legislation, the big change, like I would love to see more places carrying stock epinephrine. You hear tragic stories that where epinephrine's not there or it doesn't work, or like, especially on a college campus, kids take risky behaviors and like they forget their epinephrine, like life happens. And so I'd love to see more stock epinephrine. I'd love to see better labeling laws. As someone with celiac disease, wheat is required to be labeled as part of the top 8, but rye and barley are not, and they're often found in malt and other things like that. And so anything that says natural flavors, like I can't eat. And so I'm sure that you both understand like the fact that the foods are hidden like everywhere, that if it's not one of those top 8, it's so hard to avoid. And so like creating clear labeling laws that actually like enable more people to eat, I think are not just beneficial to those of us with food allergies and alpha-gal, but like to the greater population, because people should be able to know what's in their food. Right. But then I think also like at a more local level, like I'm really working with my school to try to create changes in the dining hall and changes to their stock epinephrine policy and changes to getting RA training about food allergies, and having better accommodation processes that reflect more of the reality of like the social emotional aspect of food allergies, not just the physical aspect. And then I think even at like a really personal level, like just making sure that we're talking about food allergies. I have, I'm on the club swim team and we talk about food allergies more than we talk about swimming some days, because like there's a lot of us with food allergies on that team. And so it's just really cool to like see advocacy become just something that's like casual and constant rather than a big thing, because it feels like it should be a big thing, but it's really just every day.
Yeah, because there's so many people, right? Like, what's the number now? Like, I
think it's 32 million, but yeah.
And I mean, gosh, that's a huge number. And I think like I was diagnosed with my wheat. I wasn't diagnosed celiac, but I wonder if I do have celiac, but I was wheat, barley, sesame, rye prior to alpha-gal. And back then, I just remember that was 15 years ago. So trying to find like flour that wasn't made from chickpea flour, like I remember baking really early on and being like, oh, so like now we've come so far, right? Like we've got really delicious gluten-free things, but we still have so much further to go. And it's like, at what point does it tip to where there, because the numbers are there, we have so many people. So when does it become a little bit more, using the word casual, but it kind of puts it together a little bit. You want it to be more of the normal, I guess, that it's not this conversation. It's like not heard of, you know what I mean? Because it is so relevant to so many people now. So why is it taking so long for these other elements to kind of catch up with it?
Yeah. And Candace, I love that, like the bigger community of it all too, because it's 32 million Americans have food allergies, but then recent numbers have showed that including people with intolerances, that number jumps to 85 million. And then you start talking about people, we have alpha-gal, we have autoimmune disorders like celiac disease, EOE, Hashimoto's, we have such an expansive community who are have these medical diets, and it's this is a huge population, and we don't talk about it. We don't create infrastructure that works for this population. And it just baffles me, because I think that if we start, really looking at this broader community rather than divvying it up, it creates more of this sense of cohesion. And how do we create food and a way of labeling food that works for everybody? Because it's not just small little populations tucked in the corner. It's most people.
Right.
I think that is so relevant too, because a couple of things. First, until people are talking about this, people are not going to be paying attention to it. And I'm embarrassed to admit at this point in my life that prior to my own diagnosis, I was not well educated on allergies, and I wasn't diagnosed till I was 40. I was about 40 when I was diagnosed. And so that's a little bit embarrassing, and it's not the way that it should be when such a huge percentage of people are living with this. I mean, it impacts, at this point in my life, it impacts so many of the decisions that I make. It's not just what I'm going to eat for lunch, but it's where am I going to go? Am I safe going to the grocery store? Can I stay overnight somewhere? Where are we going to stay when we go on vacation? And I know I'm not the only one there. I know that's what anybody with allergies is facing. So you're right. We need to make this casual conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you said the decision piece thing, I know you all had a debacle with your stay in Florida and with Fair. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just really appreciate finding other people who understand what it's like to have to think this through on every decision level. Because even I remember making my choice to go to college, and I love where I'm at right now. But I got into schools, called the dietitian, and after that conversation, I was like, nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. And they were like, we don't have anything to help you. And I was like, so absolutely, every decision goes through the food allergy lens first, and then, can be made as other decisions.
Right, yeah. Right. And, that segue is really nice. We've been wondering about how you got involved with your university. You've given us a little hint about it, but how are you getting involved to make it inclusive for those with food allergies, including yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little context. Last year I lived on campus because I was an average freshman, and I was on the meal plan, and from the first step, it was clear that they did not have a system set up for people with food allergies. And I say that as going to a school that has a really robust system for food allergies, and it still just isn't enough. But my original accommodation was just to eat at the G8 station, which is the station that's free of the top 8 major allergens. And I was like, that's cool, except I'm also allergic to chicken and turkey. And those are served there 8 to 9 times a week. And there are only 14 meals. And so I was like, this math doesn't work. And the accommodations office was like, nah, you're fine. And I was like, So, long story short, I show up the first day of school and there's no food that I can eat on campus because all of their food has been put out on the line with chicken and turkey next to it. I'm like, there's cross-contamination. Are you kidding me? And the dietitian and my mom are standing there and we're all like, oops. And so I ended up getting a partial accommodation where any days they were serving chicken or turkey, I would text ahead and they'd make separate food for me in the back. And it worked really well and I was chilling and I was happy and the food was not exciting. It was not fabulous, but it was working until about October of last year. And I had an allergic reaction on campus at the G8 station to eggs. which should never have been at G8 because eggs are one of the top 8. And that reaction really served as the catalyst to me to realize that, like, previously all my struggles with getting accommodations had been, specific to me and my strange food allergens and like my specific situation. But I think that, like, when I reacted to the food served at G8 to every other student who eats there that contained egg, I happened to be the kid who had the reaction that day. But anybody with an egg allergy could have had that reaction that day. And it just, to me, really became like a moment that, like, I can't solve this at an individual issue anymore. I have to do something bigger. Right. And through that process, I've met everybody and their brother who manages dining. I've found every system, every nook and cranny, every problem. And so I've kind of like become this de facto expert on how to accommodate food allergies at school. And I really just feel like I have to keep talking about it because I have this experience, and I talk to other people who have food allergies who are like, oh yeah, I just don't go to the dining hall, or like, oh yeah, I have low level reactions all the time, but I don't know who I would tell, or they won't listen to me. And I'm like, these are the problems that, like, let's build a better system to manage that. And so that's really how I got involved with the campus dining stuff, because I was like, I have this information and it would be a shame if I didn't do something with it.
Every college campus needs a student like you who's willing to go out there and actually change the system rather than just avoid it. Mm-hmm. Good for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was going to say, so interestingly enough, I have a really good friend here whose daughter has a severe lactose dairy allergy, and she is a freshman at a university and just had a really severe reaction due to a medication she was given. She's also on the swim team of this other university. And we've been talking back and forth because they've now had to go through, just all these meetings and trying to get to the bottom of it. Clearly, she was not given the appropriate medication. She ended up in the ER. It was just a really scary situation. So with all of your knowledge, do you have any tips or guidance for others at other universities? Like, is there a resource people can utilize online, or do you have any sort of guidance for maybe some other college kids that are dealing with this stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple pieces to it, and none of them are solved or like none of them fix everything. But I found that, like, getting to know the dietitian was really amazing, because, like, we built a relationship together over about what did I need and how did this work? Because what would happen is, like, even from the first day, we made a plan and it didn't work. And I was like, hey, this isn't working. And I probably met with her every single week through the fall semester, because it would be like, okay, I'm not getting big enough portions. Okay, I'm not getting enough variety. Okay, all of my food is white today. Can we talk about broccoli or cauliflower and rice and like pork? And I was like, there's no color. Like, are we kidding me? Like, come on. There's no fruit in my diet. I was like, really? Could we? There's no desserts on campus that I can eat. It's like, yeah, I want ice cream. Like, I just want ice cream. Right. And so, like, it was really like a growing process, and it was exhausting. And but really, like, working with the dietitian, I think, is your best bet, because, for me, in my experience, the accommodations go through the accommodation office, but those people aren't on the ground. Like, they don't see what the dining experience looks like or what I'm doing, and they don't have that understanding. But a dietitian can really, like, become your friend in that sense. But the other thing that I would recommend, and, like, I was really hesitant to jump into this, but after I had my allergic reaction, I had no idea how to move forward. I was like, I can't eat food. I feel miserable. I still am doing class. I'm on the opposite side of the country from my family. Like, what am I doing? And I reached out to the Disabled Student Union, or DSU, on my campus. And I was like, hi, am I disabled? Like, can you help me? ? And they were like, hi. And they, like, welcomed me in, and have really just been such a great community to work with, because whether it's like, we now have a dining committee on campus that specifically looks at how do people with dining restrictions navigate the dining hall. And so I could message them and be like, hey, I'm going to this meeting. Does anyone else, like, fit this bill? Does anyone else want to come? And people would show up just, like, in support of what I was doing. Or recently, I've been going to meetings at the accommodation office with other students who have food allergies and being like, how can I help? Even if I can just, like, you know, be your backup or like give you like a nice pep talk at the beginning, like whatever it is. And so this community has really been a really great win for me and such an incredible group to be a part of. But like they also have this understanding that whether you're disabled with food like we are or disabled in another way, like you understand that going through life, like seemingly everyday activities, it can be hard, whether it's eating or like getting into the classroom, whatever that is. And I think that that shared understanding just simply can't be replaced by anything else. And I think it's incredible to be a part of this group. So I would recommend like reaching out to a group like that and trying to find other people who can be your backup, or even if it's just your like average friend group, like sharing with them about this and so that they can be your backup.
Oh, that's such good advice. And I think it speaks to something else you said, which is similar to what Candace and I always say, where we say the bigger we are, the bigger this group is, whether it's food allergies or tick-borne diseases or individuals with disabilities, the more we can cross over, the louder our voice is going to be, right? And that's the more people are going to be talking about it. So those are great pieces of advice.
And
no,
how
I love that.
Like how important support is, because before you went into that, I was thinking like, where's your support system within your peer group, right? Because it's so needed. We need that support. And I love that you found that. And I hope that others listening will be encouraged to reach out, because we have to, or we can get bogged down and feel so tired and exhausted. And it's like, how do we reinvent ourselves in whatever season it is, whether we're a college student or we're a 40-year-old mom of children? It's like we all have to navigate that, right? And find our support system. So I'm so grateful that you have found that, because you need that, along with the amazing work that you're doing and like powering ahead. It's still, you need that support,
Absolutely. And I think like I found support with DSU, but I've also found support in places I didn't always expect. Like I last year in October, when I had my reaction, I like knocked on my friend's door, and we had known each other for like 2.5 months. And I was like, "Can you come to the ER with me?"
Yeah.
And she's all like, "Yes." She has a paper due the next day, and she sits in the ER with me for 4 hours while I'm there. And then like the next day is all like, "Okay, here's the plan." And she was like, next year, we're going to live off campus, and we're going to get you your own toaster so that you can have your toasted bread. Because at this point I was complaining about having untoasted gluten-free bread, which not the move. And she really like showed up for me. And like my roommates right now, she's one of them, they're just phenomenal at understanding about being like, okay, how do we do food that's safe for you? And they actually on their own decided we were going to be an egg-free household. And so they're just no raw eggs. And it's like life-changing. It's amazing. But also I found support like on the swim team. Like I'm on the club swim team, and they've turned out to be like these great friends and supporters in all of this who will listen. And it's just like these support systems, you find them in places you least expect. But I mean, you two obviously know how great a support system is and how much that matters.
That is so beautiful to hear, because I think often we hear these stories about people, so many of the individuals who reach out to us, the first thing they say is, "I'm so lonely," or "I don't have people to support me." But the fact of the matter is that there are people out there who want to do that. You just need to find them, and I think, we also talk a lot about how hard it is to ask for help, how hard it is to ask for support. But look at what happened. You asked for a companion to go to the emergency room, and you ended up with with an apartment full of support. That is just really cool. And I think that's a beautiful testament to all those people out there who are listening, who don't feel like they have somebody, because whether it's 2 Alpha Gals online or Elise or, your next door neighbors, there's a support group out there. There are people out there who want to help, who are willing to help, who don't find it as a burden to help.
Absolutely. And I was listening to one of your previous episodes where you were talking about how hard it is to ask for support. And it really struck me because just the other weekend, like I was going out with some friends, and we were going to get dinner at another friend's house, and we were about a block from the house, and my roommate looks at me and she's like, "Did you eat?" And I was like, "No, I'm fine." And she was like, "No, you didn't eat." And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Let's go get you food." And she like dragged me to the Chipotle down the street, and she was like, "Let's get you food. You can bring it to our friend's house. Like, let's do this right." And you're just like, in that moment, like, I don't know why I felt like a burden, but I was all like, no, we're gonna miss the bus. I miss the bus every day. We're gonna miss the bus. Like, this is gonna be a problem. Like, come on, Elise. And she really stopped me and she was like, no, like we can be late to this. Like, we need you to eat. And so it was really great to have that support, but it is absolutely, like, even to this day, exhausting and hard to ask for help.
Well, and I think you hit on something too. And Debbie and I talk about this a lot, that we circle, like we have cycles, right? Where we cycle from feeling like a burden to feeling like Wonder Woman, like, we're going to take charge, and it's everything in between, right? Like, where you're never going to, I think, be immune to that. Like, I don't think you're ever going to stop feeling those feelings at some point. But what did you have kind of a pivotal moment in your life where you felt that shift within your own mindset of like, of realizing how important our mindset is to be able to cycle out of that kind of the darkness into the light, which we say like going from survival to joy? Was there a pivotal time in your life that you really could see how important that was in your mindset?
Oh, that is such a good question, because I agree, we do cycle, and like, I feel like as I got into high school and like at the beginning of my high school career, I was like, I'm going to sit around and just like do the things and do the schoolwork. And I started to realize in high school that I was like, we're really doing a lot of food-centered activities and I don't feel safe. And I think it got to the point where I was like, my school did donuts at two big events, one in the fall and one in the spring, and the entire school in a gym with donuts. And then they sent us back to do like regular everyday things. And I was like, there's donut crumbs on every single surface in this entire school, and I'm gonna die. No, I didn't think I was gonna die, but like in the sense that like I was terrified and like didn't pay attention to anything else I was doing those days. And I think at that point I was like, I think my health and safety matters. And in that moment I was like, okay, let's have these conversations. And then I think even more so like in the last few years, like during the pandemic, when I was sitting at home by myself and I didn't have to worry about food allergies because my house at home was like egg and gluten free, like it was safe. And then coming back out into the world, I was like, you know what? It was really nice to not have to worry about food allergies. Like, let's bring the advocacy back rather than just the fear. And so I think having that time and space to reflect on what feeling safe feels like versus what that fear feels like has just really served to like continue to push me to try to find the light and the joy, because we should be able to have these smiles and laughter throughout it all.
Well, we think so. We agree with you. And, I kind of want to point out behind you, you've got this beautiful wall of photos and it says her passion burned brighter than her fears. And that is sort of the perfect description of you. Like, you are such a great role model for other young people living out there with allergies, that this can be done, and it can be done in a joyful way, and you can be your own advocate and still eat safe. You're a fantastic example.
Yes.
Thank you.
You are. And I was sitting here going, when was your pivotal moment? And you're what, Elise? Only 20?
I'm 19.
19.
Not even 20.
You are gonna do amazing things for this world. So
you're changing the world for people like us. You're stepping into this space with grace and passion and compassion. That's another thing, right? And strength. And those of us who living with food allergies need that so bad. And it's so encouraging to see someone sort of your young age, stepping into this space and sort of taking the baton and showing other kids, especially, that it's okay to be living with food allergies,
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, that's really like the goal. And it's, I think, like incredible to have this support community, to have you all here talking about this. Because I know you've said this before, but like that sense of loneliness. When I was a kid, I thought I was the only kid with an egg allergy. That is far from reality. I just wasn't talking to the right people, apparently. But I have since found like people like you all and people at the fair conferences who get it really deeply. I've made friends who get it. And it's like, it really is such a cool experience to now be able to take these experiences and talk about them and advocate and just share like my story and lived experiences, because there's so much good that we can do.
There is so much good that we can do. What a beautiful way to state it.
Yes. And you are, girl, you are setting it on fire.
Oh,
I just love it. And we are totally here to support you however we can. So you just have to keep us like in the loop of your work and how it is transpiring, because we want to be there to help.
absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I have new ideas all the time. And so it's cool to get to like share them and to have this. I love this.
Yeah.
We like being on the sharing end. So tell us anything you want.
Yes. Yes.
Here we go. Elise, with our hardest question of the entire interview. I like to preface this by saying every time we record that Candace and I identify very much with music. It's something we love. It can really impact the way you feel. And it's something that those of us with food allergies do not react to. So if you were to pick a song or an artist or an album that represents joy for you, whether it's in this exact moment, somebody on the top, 100 Billboard, or something from all time, is there somebody or some piece of music that brings you joy?
Yeah. I'm going to go with Wings by Little Mix. It was a song that I first came across in middle school, and my dad started playing it during relays for my summer swim team in a really casual environment. And it just like has become this moment of like, everything's good. I'm surrounded with good people and doing something I love. And it just has really come to encapsulate that feeling of like contentment and joy. And so always Wings will make me feel better.
Oh, I love that.
I love that. Yeah, that's so great. We thank you so much for spending some time with us today and talking to us and sharing with our listeners all about what you're doing and what, they can take a page from your book and go out and spread the word about allergies. But we just thank you so much for talking with us today.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a joy and an honor.
We've loved it. Thanks, Elise. Thank you for joining us today on In the Tall Grass. Visit us at 2alphagals.com. That's TWOalphagals.com. Or you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at 2alphagals. If you enjoyed listening, please leave a review and help us grow this community.
We're all faced with obstacles on our journey, whether it be food allergies or tick-borne diseases. You might outgrow the reactions, but you won't outgrow the person you become. Ticks suck, but life doesn't have to.